What if the real problem with stress is not that you experience it, but that your body has forgotten how to switch it off? You finish the difficult conversation, close your laptop, leave work, or finally get into bed, yet somehow your heart still feels unsettled, your thoughts keep racing, and your body remains tense. That may not simply be a matter of having too much on your mind. Your nervous system may still be operating in what is often called stress mode. And the longer your body stays there, the harder recovery can become. Stress itself is not the enemy. In fact, stress is a normal and necessary biological response. Your body was designed to recognize a challenge, activate its defenses, deal with the situation, and then return to a calmer state. The real problem begins when the pressure becomes continuous, relentless, and difficult to escape. That is when stress can begin affecting both your physical and mental well-being. Most people understand that stress feels unpleasant, but they often underestimate how quickly repeated stress can place a burden on the entire body. To understand how you can manage that response, it helps to first understand what your nervous system is designed to do naturally. Your body relies on two major systems to regulate the stress response. The first is the sympathetic nervous system, often described as the fight or flight system. Imagine the kind of danger humans faced thousands of years ago. If an immediate threat appeared, your body needed to react without wasting time. The sympathetic system would increase your heart rate, sharpen your attention, redirect energy, and prepare your muscles to either confront the danger or get away from it. That response is useful when you actually need to perform under pressure. The second system works in the opposite direction. It is called the parasympathetic nervous system, and you can think of it as your rest, recovery, and restoration system. Once the challenge has passed, this system helps slow your heart rate, reduce the stress response, and give your body an opportunity to repair and restore itself. Both systems are essential. You need the ability to respond when something demands your attention, but you also need the ability to come back down afterward. Every day brings some form of pressure. Maybe you have an important task to finish, a difficult conversation to handle, a presentation to deliver, or simply a long list of responsibilities waiting for you. A certain amount of stress helps you perform. The issue is what happens after the challenge is over. If your body remains in a heightened state instead of returning efficiently to recovery, that imbalance can gradually wear you down. This is why resilience is not about living a completely stress-free life. That is impossible. Resilience is about being able to respond when stress arrives and then recover when it is gone. The goal is not to eliminate stress, but to help your body become better at handling it and switching back into a restorative state. And one of the most interesting tools for doing that is a nerve you carry with you every second of every day, the vagus nerve. This large nerve connects the brain with important organs including the heart, lungs, and digestive system, and it plays a major role in the parasympathetic response. When you influence this system, you can encourage your body to move away from fight or flight and toward calm and recovery. The good news is that you do not always need complicated techniques to work with it. Simple actions such as changing the way you breathe, humming, singing, or even briefly exposing your face to cool water can send signals associated with calming the nervous system. And that is where the first practical strategy begins. Learning how to deliberately use your breathing to help your body shift out of stress mode. Learning how to deliberately use your breathing to help your body shift out of stress mode is one of the simplest things you can practice. And unlike many stress management techniques, you can do it almost anywhere. You do not need special equipment, a quiet room, or a large amount of free time. Your breath is always available, and the way you control it can influence the signals your nervous system receives. When you are under pressure, you may naturally begin breathing faster or more shallowly. That pattern can reinforce the feeling that something is wrong. Slowing the breath and making the exhalation longer can send your body a very different message. It is one reason people instinctively tell someone who is overwhelmed to stop and breathe. The advice may sound simple, but there is a physiological reason behind it. One particularly useful technique is known as the physiological sigh. It involves taking a deep breath in through your nose, following it with a second, shorter inhale, and then releasing the air through a long, slow exhalation. That second small inhale helps fully expand the lungs before the extended exhale. Try it slowly. Breathe deeply through your nose, add one short additional breath, and then let the air out gradually. Repeating the pattern a few times can help you become more aware of the tension in your body and may encourage a calmer state. Another approach is extended exhale breathing. The idea is straightforward. Inhale for around 4 seconds, then exhale for about 8 seconds. Your exhalation is twice as long as your inhalation. You can also practice slower overall breathing by reducing your breathing rate to roughly 5 or 6 breaths per minute. That works out to about 1 complete breath every 10 seconds. These techniques can be especially useful before situations that naturally increase tension. You might practice them before an uncomfortable conversation, before giving a speech, before appearing on camera, or when you are lying in bed and your mind refuses to settle. The purpose is not to force yourself to become perfectly calm. Instead, you are giving your nervous system a different pattern to follow. With repetition, these small practices can become easier to use when you actually need them. But breathing is only one way to influence the system. The vagus nerve can also be stimulated through other simple signals. Humming and singing can engage the muscles and breathing patterns associated with this response, while cool water on the face may also trigger changes that encourage the body to slow down. The important point is that you are not powerless when stress appears. You have several ways to communicate with your own nervous system. Of course, when someone is already overwhelmed, remembering a breathing technique may be harder than it sounds. That is why some people look for structured tools that can provide a more consistent signal. There are devices designed to stimulate the vagus nerve externally, including products such as Pulsetto. These devices are intended to provide controlled stimulation along the nerve and can be used as part of a routine for winding down or managing moments when stress begins to build. If you are considering a device like this, it is important to understand what it can and cannot do and to follow appropriate guidance rather than treating it as a replacement for professional care. Whether you use a structured device or rely on basic techniques such as breathing, humming, or cool water, the underlying idea remains similar. You are trying to help your body move from a heightened stress response toward recovery. And once you understand that principle, you can begin combining it with another powerful tool that does not require sitting still at all. Your body stores the effects of stress in many ways, and movement can help you process that physical load. That brings us to the next strategy. Using the right kind of exercise to help your nervous system recover instead of adding even more pressure to an already overloaded system. Using the right kind of exercise to help your nervous system recover instead of adding even more pressure to an already overloaded system is an important distinction. When people feel stressed, they often assume the answer is to work out harder. Exercise is certainly beneficial, but more is not always better, especially when your body is already carrying a heavy stress load. Some forms of movement can support recovery without pushing your system further into a demanding state. One of the most useful options is what is commonly called Zone 2 exercise. A brisk walk is a simple example. You move quickly enough that your heart rate rises and you are clearly working, but you can still hold a conversation, even if talking requires some effort. That moderate level of activity gives your body a physical task without creating the same intense demand associated with an all-out workout. Another option is controlled strength training. Instead of rushing through movements or trying to lift as much as possible, the emphasis is on slower, deliberate movements and maintaining control throughout the exercise. This can give your body the benefits of resistance training while allowing you to remain more aware of your breathing and physical state. Gentle forms of movement can also be valuable. Yoga and Pilates, particularly when combined with deliberate breathing, can provide a useful combination of movement and nervous system regulation. The important idea is to match the activity to your current state. High-intensity exercise has real health benefits, but it also creates temporary physical stress. Your body has to respond to that demand before it can return to a calmer state. If you are already overwhelmed, exhausted, or constantly tense, adding another major stressor may not be the best first step. Sometimes what you need is not another challenge, but an opportunity to restore balance. A brisk walk, controlled movement, or a few minutes of slow breathing may be more appropriate than forcing yourself through an extremely demanding workout simply because you believe exercising harder must automatically make you feel better Recovery is about finding the right amount of stress and then allowing your body to adapt and settle. But movement is only part of the picture. There is another surprisingly simple habit that can support relaxation, and it comes from something many people already keep in their kitchen: tea. Green tea is often discussed for its health benefits, and one reason is that it contains naturally occurring compounds that may influence the nervous system. One of these is L-theanine, an amino acid found in tea that has been associated with a calmer state of mind. A typical cup of tea provides a modest amount of L-theanine, and for some people that may contribute to a mild sense of relaxation without making them feel heavily sedated. Green tea also contains caffeine, so the overall effect can be different from person to person. Some people experience a combination of calmness and mental alertness, while others may be more sensitive to caffeine and should choose their timing carefully. Research has explored how L-theanine may influence brain activity, including alpha wave activity, a pattern associated with relaxed wakefulness and meditation. That does not mean drinking green tea is equivalent to meditating, but it helps explain why some people experience a more relaxed yet focused state after consuming it. Then there is lavender tea, which offers another approach to relaxation. Lavender contains aromatic compounds, including linalool, that have been studied for their potential effects on stress and relaxation. Even the aroma of lavender may influence how a person feels before taking the first sip. A warm cup of lavender tea can therefore become part of a calming routine, particularly during periods when tension is building. Another familiar choice is chamomile tea. Chamomile flowers contain a compound called apigenin, which has been studied for its interaction with pathways involved in relaxation and sleep. A cup in the evening can become a gentle signal that the day is winding down. These teas are not magic solutions, and they should not be treated as replacements for medical treatment when someone has persistent or severe stress. Their value is in the routine. When simple calming habits are repeated consistently, they can become part of a larger strategy for helping your body recover. And when you combine that routine with breathing and appropriate movement, the effect becomes much more meaningful because you are no longer relying on one technique alone. You are building a system that helps your body recognize when it is time to come out of stress mode and return to recovery. Building a system that helps your body recognize when it is time to come out of stress mode and return to recovery is really the central lesson here. You do not need to wait until stress becomes overwhelming before you respond to it. In fact, the most effective approach is often to practice these habits regularly so they become familiar enough to use when pressure begins to rise. Start with your breathing. If you notice your body becoming tense or your thoughts speeding up, slow things down deliberately. You can use the 4-second inhale followed by an 8-second exhale, allowing the out-breath to remain slow and controlled. Another option is the physiological sigh. Take a deep breath through your nose, add a second shorter inhale, and then release the breath gradually. Repeat it several times and pay attention to how your body responds. The goal is not to force stress away instantly, but to give your nervous system repeated signals that the immediate threat has passed. These techniques become especially useful when practiced before stressful events, rather than only after you have reached your limit. You might use them before an important meeting, a difficult discussion, a public presentation, or any situation where you know your body tends to become tense. Over time, the practice can become a familiar part of your response to pressure. Movement can then reinforce that recovery process. A brisk walk is one of the simplest choices because it requires almost no equipment and can be done in many settings. Walk at a pace that raises your breathing and heart rate while still allowing you to speak, even if carrying on a conversation takes some effort. That gives you a practical way to release some physical tension without turning the activity into another major stressor. If you prefer strength training, focus on controlled movements instead of constantly chasing maximum intensity. And if your body responds well to gentler exercise, yoga or Pilates combined with slow breathing can provide both movement and relaxation. The key is recognizing what your body needs at that moment. Exercise should support your health, not become another source of pressure. When you are already overloaded, pushing harder simply because you feel guilty about not doing enough may work against the recovery you actually need. The same principle applies to your daily routines. A calming cup of tea can become a small but consistent signal that it is time to slow down. Green tea may be useful earlier in the day for people who tolerate caffeine well, especially because its L-theanine content may support a relaxed but attentive state. If caffeine tends to make you restless, choosing a different option or limiting green tea later in the day makes more sense. Lavender tea can be another choice when you want something soothing, and the aroma itself can become part of the relaxation experience. Chamomile is often better suited to the evening because it is commonly used as part of a bedtime routine and contains apigenin, a plant compound associated with calming effects. These habits are most useful when they work together. Think about what happens when you practice slow breathing, take a moderate walk, and create a relaxing evening routine instead of treating each activity as an isolated trick. You are repeatedly giving your body opportunities to move away from a heightened state and return to restoration. That is very different from simply trying to ignore stress. Avoidance does not teach your body how to recover. Recovery does. This distinction matters because life will continue to bring challenges. There will be deadlines, disagreements, responsibilities, unexpected problems, and days when everything seems to happen at once. You cannot control every stressor, but you can influence what happens inside your body after the stressor appears. That is where resilience begins. Resilience does not mean that you never feel anxious, frustrated, tired, or overwhelmed. It means your system can respond to pressure and eventually find its way back toward balance. The sympathetic nervous system has a job, and you should not try to eliminate it. You need that activation when you have to focus, act, perform, or respond quickly. But you also need the parasympathetic system to take over when the demand has ended. If you constantly remain in a heightened state, your body never receives enough opportunity to fully restore itself. That is why recovery should be treated as a necessary part of health rather than an optional luxury. And there is one final point that ties everything together. These strategies are not about becoming completely free from stress. They are about becoming better at recovering from it. Once you understand that, the goal changes from asking, how can I avoid stress, to asking, how can I help my body come back down after stress? That question leads directly to the final step, putting these practices together into a simple routine you can actually maintain.